Everybody ready? Good morning.
Morning.
Today's a Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting. It's August 23rd, 2013. My name is Jeff McMillan. I'm the chairman. At this time, we're going to ask Commissioner Harold Cannon to do our invocation.
Father God, thank you. Thank you for the chance to be here. Thank you for the chance to, in this brief time, be stewards of what you have provided us. May we do it well. Be differences of opinion, be differences of thought, differences of interest. And I thank you for that. That's good and that's healthy, and I think that's the way you wanted it to be. Most importantly, may we listen to you. Even if it means hitting the pause button, may we listen to you and remember that you have the wisdom we need, not us. You've given us a lot, not by our own doing, but by grace. I thank you for our staff. Blessings to them, blessings to our officers in the field. Pray blessings to our men and women who are overseas and in this country, giving us this opportunity to have the freedoms that we have. True blessings to them and their families this day, Father. For it's in Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cannon. At this time, I'm going to ask Ms. Barbara to do a roll call, please.
Jim Bledsoe.
Here.
Harold Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Griggs.
Here.
Jeff McMillan.
Here.
Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
Julie Schuster. Clayton Stout. James Stroud.
Here.
Trey Teague.
Here.
Jamie Woodson. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you, ma'am. Has everyone on the commission had a chance to look at the minutes from the previous meeting on June 28th? If there's any discussion of them, if not, may I have a motion to approve those?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, got approval of the minutes. Is there any announcements or anything from the commission or Director Carter? We good there? All right, I would like to recognize, we appreciate the attendance of Representative Jimmy Matlock that's in the audience with us, and we do appreciate him coming today. We also have former Commissioner Mike Hayes here, and we appreciate him. So we will get started go straight to the Wildlife Management Committee, and I'm gonna turn it over to Chairman Trey Teague. No, excuse me, I apologize. We have some presentations we're gonna do first. I'm gonna recognize Director Carter. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One of the great things about getting together at the commission meetings is the opportunity to recognize some people who've done some outstanding things over the years or even very recently, but at least it's a time for the commission and the agency and the public in general to recognize some people that have go above and beyond in several different areas. And this morning, we have a few recognitions that are just outstanding in their own way. But to begin with, I want to talk just a second about the Safari Club International, and especially the Tennessee Valley chapter. Over the years, they've worked with the agency in any number of arenas and areas to help provide funding from everything from some of the things that we utilized in law enforcement to education programs to youth events and on and on. So we appreciate that very much. And this morning, we have Bill Swan III, who is the treasurer, and Keith Watson, the chapter president of the Tennessee Valley chapter of Safari Club International. And they have a presentation they'd like to make actually to the commission and the agency. So, Bill?
I get to speak, huh? Wow, this is pretty important. First of all, thanks for letting us be here today. Hey, Mike. We've enjoyed being able to fund part of the elk restoration project, and like other things TWRA has had their hands in, I feel like that we'll definitely see a prosperous elk herd in the near future. But what we've brought here is a commitment of $25,000 over a, Keith, what was that? Over a
8-year period, I think.
is that what it was? Okay. Installment of $4,000 I'd like to present to the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Foundation to help with the elk restoration here in Tennessee.
Steve, you come up.
I got, who got the real check?
No, you
Okay.
get Director Carter.
Come on here.
Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you.
I also wanted to bring Steve Bennett up. Steve has pretty much been the coordinator of our elk program up on the North Cumberland since its inception, and we appreciate that very much and thought it was only fitting that he be a part of this. I also want to make another recognition of somebody that would like to make a presentation of their own, but a couple of different ways to do this, I suppose. But I want to introduce Carter Davis, who is president of the Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club at this particular time. Carter used to work for our agency. He was a Lieutenant Carter until just very recent. Carter Davis works with a fellow named John Mike. I thought if their mothers could have ever gotten together, they'd both have normal names. But it takes a minute sometimes, I understand. But anyway, Carter, wherever you are, if you could come up for a second. And I'd also like to recognize Commissioner Woodson, who is going to help with the presentation. Make just a couple of announcements as Carter and Commissioner Woodson come up. I've had the opportunity to work with this particular club ever since I've been in the agency in several different roles. It's always been an honor. I've been to their game suppers, which if you ever get the chance to go, I would highly recommend to do that. It's a good event. They always involve a lot of students from the University of Tennessee. It's just been a pleasure over the years. So, Carter.
Well, I don't have much to say, but I'm current president of the Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club, which is probably the oldest sportsman's club in the state. We've been a very strong proponent of TWRA, and we're very active in lobbying with the legislature and supporting TWRA every chance we get, and that's about it. Jamie?
I have two very important honors, and if I could ask Commissioner Cannon just to join me up here while we make these presentations. My friend and colleague, now Mayor Tim Burchett, is not with us this morning and wishes that he could be, because I'm getting the opportunity to do what I know he would love to do, which is honor one important person and one important organization. So I'm going to go with the organization first, if that can work for you all. Former Senator Burchett and I have worked together for many, many years, and one of the things that I admire about him is just his closeness with the community, and he so many times will recognize those organizations and those individuals and communities and just say we should take a moment to honor them. And the first I want to publicly recognize on Mayor Burchett's behalf is the Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club, and he has designated today the Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club Day in Knox County, and really honoring the work that has happened since the formation of the club in 1961. The work that has gone on in partnership with so many individuals, not only the agency, but citizens throughout this community, the members of the club. And I want to make sure that we take a moment to recognize them and say, Happy Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Day. So I'm going to present this to you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And I have to say that I would love for Mr. Daniels, and I know it's going to take a bit of maneuvering, but if Mr. Gordon Daniels could join us on this side of the room, it would be lovely. And I know that if Mayor Burchett were here, he would be grinning from ear to ear at this opportunity. Mr. Daniels is an important senior member of not only this community and this state, but also of the Sportsman's Club. He is someone who came to Knoxville, I believe, Mr. Daniels, in 1961. Is that right? And then in 1962, really leaned into the work of the Sportsman's Club, of his role as a citizen in this community. And I think it's very important for all of us to honor him. And I think that even though this is the Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club Day, you've gotten bumped. And you are sharing this with Gordon Daniels Day here in Knox County. And we want to honor and recognize you, Mr. Daniels, for your incredible contributions to wildlife issues, to all issues that are good for our great state of Tennessee. So happy Gordon Daniels Day.
By the way, Mr. Daniels will turn 102 next month.
I'd like to get a picture real quick.
I share Commissioner Cannon's wish for a very quickly turning birthday that's coming up, and thank you for being here. That means a lot to all of us, and as well as what the club has done. Make it one that's not on our agenda, but I wanted to bring forward to you. And if I can make just a couple of remarks before I introduce Tommy Whitehead. Tommy's our Regional Boating Hunter Education Coordinator for our Region 4 area. There's 25 counties in East Tennessee. So, Tommy, if you want to be coming on up. The Hunter Education Program in Tennessee was recognized in 1976 as being the most outstanding program in North America. National Rifle Association evaluated the programs throughout the country, and at that time we took that honor. And the way that honor came about in a lot of ways was by the people who were involved in the program. Some of those were volunteer instructors, and they still are there today, a force of about 1,000 people across the state who volunteer their time to make hunter education a project that not only goes to the persons taking the course, but to the families that are a part of it. Their sole opportunity to gain out of that is what they gain from interaction to the students. The rest of it certainly is volunteer time, and we could not have done it. We're about the 750,000 mark in terms of students that have been trained, so it's quite a milestone. One of the persons, I don't want to say anything that Tommy might say here, but I just want to say a word about Billy Long, who's here this morning, and Tommy can tell you why. I first met Billy in 1973 when we were doing hunter education training in the Knoxville area. We used to do a thing called the Knoxville News Sentinel Clinic at the time, and people would come from all over East Tennessee to come, and there would be hundreds of them who come to that weekend to do a big hunter education thing. Sam Venable, local writer at that time, was a part of that. And Billy Long, I got to know then and have known him ever since. He's extraordinary in lots of different ways in that he makes some of the most beautiful fishing lures I've ever seen. I've never fished with any that I have. I keep them on a shelf so that they don't get scarred up by all those fish with those nasty teeth, Bobby. It's been quite an honor to know him. But anyway, I just wanted to say publicly and off to the side, Billy showed me some time ago, 2 or 3 years ago, an old certificate he had, and I was honored that my name was on his certificate as being part of the training when Billy was part of that. So that's just my personal thing to say thanks to Billy, but I think Tommy can take it from here.
Bill, if you'll come forward. While he's coming forward, I'll give you a little bit more history. And just here in East Tennessee, Billy's probably affected some 2,500, 3,000 kids in the area just for hunter education, youth programs, Tennessee Valley Sportsman's Club. They've helped out with the youth programs, but Billy's been sort of a staple part of our program, East Tennessee, especially in Knoxville. And we're glad to have him as part of our hunter education program. He was unable to attend an annual banquet that we had last weekend at Henry Horton. And Billy was inducted into the Hunter Education Hall of Fame. He was about the 10th member into the statewide Hall of Fame, and so we wanted to award him. I know most of you in here have probably been through the hunter education program, but Billy is involved with at least 12 classes a year at our Knoxville facility, which I think Commissioner Whitson may have been certified there, as well as Congressman Duncan. And I was able to talk to Sam Venable this week, and he was going to give the presentation, but he was going to be out of town yesterday and today, so he's unable to. But on behalf of Billy's efforts and the hunter education, this time next year we'll have finished our 40th year with a very strong program. Again, almost 750,000 students have gone through that program. And we want to present this plaque, or this print here that basically says continuing the heritage. And Billy, we hope that we get a few more years out of him, and have greatly enjoyed his participation and involvement in our program for hunter education, and the honor for being inducted into the Hall of Fame.
I know that was hunter education, but he also does double duty. Occasionally he puts on a Coast Guard auxiliary uniform, and he also is instructor in our boating education program. So we work him as hard as we can. Good that you get to sit down just a little while this morning, Billy, but thanks for being here. We talked about the elk program just a second ago, and all the contributions Safari Club has made as they've over the years, and as you heard, into the coming years. And the elk program has been something we've all been proud of, and we appreciate that greatly. Also want to recognize now a couple of people who have been instrumental in on the ground, on the spot type place, and that would be Terry and Jane Lewis. Terry and Jane, come on up if you don't mind. And if you don't mind standing up while I say a couple of things here. Met Terry a few years ago. I can't remember how long ago, but I got to wander around up on the North Cumberland with he and Jane for a little while. And when we had our very first elk hunt, they literally opened up their home and all of their property for all the people who were there camping, and all the horseback riders and all the other people that came in as a part of the first elk hunt in 150 years. And they were very instrumental in setting that up. And I could go on and tell you some other things, but I'm going to read this first, and if I leave out anything, I'll try to go back and say it, but this would probably summarize it better than I could for both of y'all. And many of y'all know Terry. He's a longtime friend of the agency and a board member of the Tennessee Wildlife Federation, and the current president of the Campbell Outdoor Recreation Association, which was instrumental in getting the North Cumberland to the agency as a part of wildlife management area. He's never been afraid to roll up his sleeves and take on projects to help wildlife or to facilitate being able to enjoy the outdoors. He's not alone in his time invested in these projects. As I mentioned, Jane has always been a part of that. And when I've talked to her before on the phone, she names elk who run by their facility often. And I don't know if that's a good thing or not to know them that well, but she does fairly often. One of the efforts that has allowed thousands of people to view the elk and to be a part of the program is to take advantage of the elk viewing tower. It was built with donated materials, dollars that were raised through donations and volunteer labor, and the site's drawn literally thousands of people each year. The signage provided by the Tennessee Wildlife Federation has helped visitors better understand these majestic animals as they roam throughout the viewing area. The agency, along with grants from partners like the Chattanooga chapter of Safari Club International and the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, provides funds to purchase these materials such as seed, diesel, and other supplies. Terry plants food plots and maintains this important viewing area with a minimal drain on the agency and the personnel time. to quote Steve Bennett, who introduced a second ago as our elk coordinator, I just place the order and I don't even have to see that it's delivered. And Terry goes up and picks it up and takes it from there. Those of us who are lucky enough to have attended the first elk hunt in 2009 remember how Terry and Jane offered that property that I mentioned a second ago to all the media, all the people who were a part of the whole event. They also hosted several events each year to allow wheel-bound hunters and wounded warriors a chance to bag a turkey on their property, and they enjoy providing opportunity to several other deserving individuals in that area. I could go on and tell you lots more things, but in the interest of time, I'll just say that the contributions they've made have been enormous, and since we're here in Knoxville, we thought it would be a perfect time to recognize them publicly, even though I know many of you know them and have said personally how much you appreciate what they're doing. So to do that, we wanted to present Terry a print. And Terry, I don't know, you may already have one, but if you do, this one will mean more to you, I hope. But I'll just hold this up for the audience for a second. If you can see it at all, it's a picture of the elk herd up on the area, which was the first release site for the elk in that area. One thing it doesn't depict is the snow and the wind and everything else that was going on that day, the cars that were sliding off in the ditches, but it doesn't depict also the hundreds of people who came to watch the release of those elk. So this is called the homecoming because they came back to Tennessee after all these years, and Terry and Jane have been so instrumental as a part of that. It's only fitting that we recognize them publicly for all they've done, not only for the agency and all those people who enjoy it, but for the elk in special. Thanks again to everybody and for the time you allowed me here this morning. We'll probably have another presentation here shortly, but for right now, Chairman McMillan, that's all I have.
Thank you, Director Carter, and thank you for all the recipients of the awards this morning. It shows you what the citizens of this great state means to our wildlife resources, and we certainly appreciate you. Before we move into wildlife management, I want to make sure everybody understands that we will welcome anybody that wants to make a presentation or have questions for us this morning, but when you do, please come to the mic and state your name and who you might represent, and please address your questions to the commission. So at this time, we'll let Chairman Teague start with the Wildlife Management Committee.
Thank you, Chairman McMillan. This time I'd like to introduce Dr. Gray Anderson, Assistant Chief Wildlife.
Thank you, Commissioner Teague. At this point, I'd like to do a quick run-through of what we presented yesterday as recommendations and then ultimately amended Proclamation 1311. I do want to make a note that there were some errors that we caught in what is in your book. There were some canvasback issues and some other things that we have cleaned up, and so assuredly whatever you'll see this afternoon to sign will be clean and what we've all discussed. From a waterfowl, just running through this real quick again, everything was great on the prairies. Everything's great. Liberal package came through. Most of what we're seeing in our package, our recommendations this year is, again, day shifts. And then bag limit changes for some minor species, minor for Tennessee, canvasbacks and scaup. And then possession limit liberalizations are the primary things that we see. Again, we're going through just standard date changes. We have the real foot breakout those 2 days, 2 weeks ahead of the season. The remainder of the state is the last 60 days available. Similar for the waterfowl or for the goose. Just similar date changes. Again, all of our other goose species, and then our conservation season, which shuts down most of our other seasons, and then we finish with that light goose conservation season February 8th through March 10th. The bag limits, and this is where we had some errors in there that we have cleaned up. The liberal season gives us 6 ducks in the bag. We did make the change to allow for an additional canvasback in the bag this year, which took us to 2 canvasback in the bag. The feds pulled our scaup limit back from 4 to 3 this year, and our recommendations reflect that. Looking at all of our other birds, and this goes to the possession limits where the federal, through the whole Flyway Council process, has allowed standard two times the daily bag limit as our possession limit. Has now been expanded to 3 times the daily bag limit for all of our late waterfowl season species, and the proclamation reflects that opportunity. And that is the gist of the late waterfowl season as initially proposed, and I will cover the amended, unless you would like to stop it there and then go into the amended.
Yeah, I think if there's any questions concerning what he's presented today, we can address those now, and then once we get to the amended part of the proclamation, we can ask about that, which is sandhill cranes. Anybody from the commission, audience?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, I've lost it. Just going through our standard, what we recommended, and I will cover what we were originally given by the federal frameworks allowed a 60-day, going with our standard 60-day late season. We have shortened that, so we're requesting November 28th to January 1st, which I believe is 35 days. We are shortening the opportunity, the hours. We're going from daylight rather than half an hour before daylight, and we're going to stop at 3 p.m. This allows better identification and also gives a little bit of a temporal buffering for that 3 p.m. for the birds to go to roost. The zone remains the same as we saw from the feds, which is south of 40 and east of 56. What we recommended, we initially had 775 permits or packets of 3 permits each. We're currently recommending 400 packets of 3 permits each, with a proposed draw date probably tentatively at this point on October 19th. Leftover permits will then be issued on a first come, first serve through our regional offices. All birds will be required to be checked in. Sort of harkens back to the old deer check-in system, where we're going to have to tag that animal on the ground, and then it's not going to be formally checked in until you actually mail the form back to the state of Tennessee, to TWRA. End of the season hunter diary is going to be required as well. And all of this is keeping up with monitoring and maintenance of monitoring this population. And then we have extensive identification for the whole program, making sure people understand exactly what's going on out there. I think you can read these, but we have intention of contacting the people that are involved in this hunt at least a half dozen times with educational materials about sandhill cranes and hunting sandhill cranes before this season starts in late November. And with that is the general overview, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about what is recommended at this point if you like.
Thank you. Anybody from the commission have any questions or comments to make? Anybody from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask you if you would to review the steps you have in place to protect whooping cranes.
Ma'am, just for the record, state your name and your organization.
I'm sorry.
That's
Okay. Vicki Henderson, and I would be representing the Tennessee Ornithological Society.
The educational materials that we'll be doing, we're going to have a required test for all participants. They'll be issued a hunt permit, but that permit is not valid until they have proof that they've passed the test. And so we'll have an online test in place so they can go there, get educated. There'll be educational materials that prep them for that test. They have to have proof that we're going to have our IT folks work on the system, that once they pass it, then they get issued a number. Then that number tells them that they've passed the test. So that's our primary educational process. But then we're going to also, at the draw, they'll be given information about cranes in Tennessee. And then we're going to have information in the hunt guides on our cranes. We're going to, in our waterfowl guide that's getting ready to come out, will be there. We're going to have information on our website. We're going to have a mailer for all of the permit holders. We'll get a mailer that will have additional information. And then on all of their permits, while they're out there in the field, we'll have also diagrams of what the cranes of Tennessee look like, and so they can differentiate right there in the field. So we have And when we do get cranes, we'll probably follow the Kentucky model and try to do as much outreach as we can when the whooping cranes do come into the area. But we know they're going to be here for quite a bit of that time.
As you know, we have a lot more whooping cranes that come through our area than in Kentucky. And I recall during their hunting season, they talked about one whooping crane, and we have a lot more than that. How do you notify the hunters that a whooping crane is in the area?
I think we'll do standard outreach through our websites. I think most people get hit pretty hard with the news releases on when whooping cranes hit the area. We'll do as much as we can to make people aware of that. I don't know that we can reach out to the hunters because, I mean, in all fairness, I think we're going to see the whooping cranes. We know the whooping cranes are going to be here through the heart of the season and those low numbers, and where Kentucky has them passing through. So contacting the hunters is probably not going to be that helpful.
And you will specify when you notify that, for example, a juvenile whooping crane is in the area and they're not looking for a white bird, they're looking for a brownish bird.
Yeah, and that'll be part of the educational process. I mean, we're going to do everything we possibly can to get these people educated. And so I think I'm kind of amazed when we put our list together at how many times we're going to actually touch each hunter with educational materials. And we'll do everything we can to make them new and different materials so they don't just get the same redundant piece of information.
Our whooping cranes in the east have the designation of a non-essential population. And that gives the power to protect the whooping cranes to Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency as opposed to U.S. Fish and Wildlife. Is that correct?
I don't think it gives us any additional power. It just takes off some of the endangered species, or not power. It doesn't give us any additional authority. It just takes the onus of that Endangered Species Act off of that bird. So it doesn't have the same regulatory authority as a central flyway bird would have.
Correct, but my understanding is that it puts you in charge of the hunt so that U.S. Fish and Wildlife, of course, would not come in and close the hunt.
Correct.
Okay. And so you're in charge of that. Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency is in charge of that, correct?
Well, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service gives us the authority to have a hunt, so if we so choose. And they also oversee the whooping crane as well. So everything that they're doing from their environmental assessment of our hunt to the management of both of those populations work on the premise that the sandhill crane will be a harvested species. So it doesn't give us any additional authority.
Okay, well, that's a little confusing to me because...
Director Carter would like to... Yeah.
I just want to make a comment. Because of the designation that Gray is talking about, it does put the bird into a different regulatory system than if it were an endangered species under endangered species law. But at the same time, we have joint jurisdiction with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Most all of our investigations that handle any kind of predatory bird or federally protected bird or joint investigations, persons can be actually prosecuted under both laws if there's something that goes wrong. So the state could do that, the federal law could do it, they could jointly do it or they could do it separately. Penalties may not necessarily be the same. Federal penalties sometimes are often higher than state penalties, but both of those can work together or they can work individually. But as a rule of thumb, we have always worked together on those kind of investigations. So while it is designated as a bird under the protection of the Wildlife Resources Agency, it always was. So whenever there was anything that had to do with the whooping crane or any other species that was either in violation during a season or if there were no season at all, the agency took that regulation and prosecuted whatever was appropriate. So not to belabor the point, but yes, we would jointly investigate and prosecute either together or separately.
Okay, thank you very much. Part of the reason for my question was to clarify that because I'm not sure I completely understand the legal parts of that. But in the Mid-Continent Flyway, they close the hunting area when a whooping crane is present, and I have not heard that mentioned in your plan.
It goes back, I believe, and I can't speak to exactly how and why they manage the Mid-Continent Flyway, the population, but it's handled extraordinarily different, because in that case, it's a natural free-flying endangered species versus an experimental population, and it's handled very differently, as Director Carter was saying, puts it into a different regulatory package. Rather than an endangered species package, it goes into a different classification.
Okay, but I don't want to belabor this, but I'm trying to understand. Who has the authority to close the hunting area if a whooping crane is present in a non-essential population? I mean, they do that in the mid-continent. Let me explain where my thinking is. In the mid-continental population, the whooping cranes are spread way out. People rarely encounter a whooping crane. They also they close the area when a whooping crane is present. So I'm trying to understand exactly, how that works here, why we wouldn't close the area when a whooping crane is present, and who has the authority to do that.
Another comment. In the mid-continent population, you're right, and for the reason Gray said, it is endangered species there. Part of this regulation does not close the area, because it would be very similar under the laws that we have now. When the whooping cranes come in, if it were the same kind of regulation, waterfowl hunting would stop them on the areas around the refuge. But they've been here before during the times that the waterfowl seasons are going on. So I guess just to fast forward, closing the area, while the commission would have if we went through the proclamation process to do that, it is possible, but it's not a part of the regulations here, because it's a different set of rules under the mid-continent than it is the eastern. So it's not a part of the plan.
Okay, I understand that. All right, so let's assume, consider that a whooping crane were accidentally shot. What would you change about how you're protecting whooping cranes if that should occur?
From what I understand, with the information you gave us yesterday, there was whooping cranes at the refuge every day of the entire 2-3 months that the season could be involved in. I mean, I think we're trying to take all the precautions we can to educate the public, and also, will the penalties for taking accidentally shooting of a whooping crane, will it be spelled out to our hunters? Will they know the ramifications of it?
Yes.
Yes. I think that the ramifications are such that I know that people, when they pull their gun up, they're going to be darn sure what they're shooting at because of the ramification of it. I think they're going to be I think they're going to be motivated not to pull the trigger unless they know what they're shooting at. So we're hoping that with the education that we're doing for the hunters and the ramifications of what it would be, that they're going to be very selective when they pull that trigger. I know I would be.
I hope so.
I think we need to give our hunters some credit. We're not adding new hunters into the state by adding this season. It's hunters that are already hunting migratory birds and ducks, and there's numerous species of ducks. A lot of them look very similar, and they're used to determining which duck is which and what limits are for what duck or whatever migratory bird it might be. And they're also used to knowing that they have to pay a penalty if they're incorrect. So let's give them some credit. It's not something that's foreign to them. And secondly, could you discuss a little bit about like the accidental take of whooping cranes historically versus the death of whooping cranes by non-hunters?
All right, it's been very, very little, and it's tough to document exactly what goes on out there. But the numbers are a little. I hadn't looked at them in a bit, but
there's been 4
right,
at least,
that's
maybe
what
5.
I was thinking. It's like 4 or 5,
Yeah.
and so.
And in February of 2013, a very experienced waterfowl hunter, he was a Texas hunter. I don't think he was in Texas when this happened. Was hunting snow geese and killed a whooping crane. That was the last incident. And so, there's just a legitimate concern here, and I just wanted to make sure that, there is a possibility of closing the area if that's needed, correct? Am I right? And if you decide not to do that, that's fine, if you have good reasons for that. Yeah.
He was asked a question.
Okay.
I think it'd be appropriate for him to finish.
Well, and kind of building on what you were saying, I mean, my understanding of that 2013 case is that guy was in a closed area. So, in my opinion, that puts him in a whole different category of his activities. And so he may have accidentally You know, who knows? I don't want to go into those cases. And that's the hard part of it that's really hard to tease out. It's extraordinarily rare. I mean, they're taking, I can't remember the exact numbers, but around 20,000 birds out of the Central Flyway, and they've been doing that for decades, and several decades. And we have a few of these cases, and so I think it's extraordinarily rare. And as Commissioner Teague is mentioning, I mean, I think we're doing everything we can to educate our hunters about the difference in these birds, and I think our hunters will be able to do that. And I think we're going to. I feel comfortable with our educational efforts and our hunter ability.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Director Carter.
One last thing, I probably should have pointed out a few minutes ago, in the prosecution or in the enforcement side of trying to work through any kind of federal species, all of our wildlife officers are also cross-credentials. They also are federal officers. Now, jurisdiction in any state bordering Tennessee, so it's not only Tennessee, but any state that borders. We got jurisdiction in 8 states plus Tennessee. So in doing that, we don't have to wait for a federal officer to come in to do whatever needs to be done through the federal regulations. We almost always work together, but state officers are also federal officers in that respect, so they can prosecute under either program. And I also want to make sure that everybody understands that the whooping cranes are not taken lightly. That was a big part of the discussions in trying to decide where we could go in the regulations and in the program, and in putting together the regulations that the commission decided to go forward with the sandhill crane hunt, what we could do to help minimize that. So I don't want anybody to ever think that we don't take that seriously, or that bird is not important. We realize the number that they're building from and the number that are there. I think we have a pretty good track record of going back to any time we have any kind of species, and especially one that's threatened or endangered, the amount of time and work that's gone in to try to do whatever the enforcement side took or the education side took to try to put forward a program that would make sure that we offered limits on what people could do or had the ability to do and knew to do. So that's wanted to leave that with you. But our folks being cross-trained and cross-credentialed help, and I also think that it's a very important issue within the agency and within the commission.
Mr. Chairman.
Someone else from the audience? Yes, sir. Please state your name for the record.
My name is Robert Hill. I live at 11504 Mountain View Road in Farragut. I'm here today as an individual. My business is being retired, as you can see. I also am the group chair for the Harvey Broom Group of the Sierra Club in this area and the 19 counties surrounding it. And the Sierra Club's comments were made by Mr. Ringer yesterday in a very good paper. The comment I'm going to make is my own, and it's a request. I included it in my written comments in response to the request for comments. And the state of Tennessee has a good many acres of, in fact, a lot of acres of parks, forest, wildlife areas, natural areas, and I would really like to see those areas used by the commission to enhance the environment that sandhill cranes can live in. I understand the growth of the sandhill crane population, and it's a good success story, but they're outgrowing their environmental area where they can range and feed. It takes room, but I think we've got enough lands in the state that if, as a commission, if you all could remember that and consider how we might expand the habitat for sandhill cranes, I would personally be grateful. That's my comment. It's simple, but I felt like if I could make it all at once to you all, you might listen to me a little more. I also want to thank you for coming here. It's the first commission meeting I've ever been to. And I know that we, as citizens in the state, we trust you all to take care of our wildlife. And I think the trust is in good hands, and we thank you for coming and hope you'll make this a regular stop on your commission meetings. Thank you very much. I'll take any questions you want to ask, but might be able to answer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My apologies for not being present yesterday in the meeting. We had about 600 district superintendents and principals from around the state in a conversation about how to align our important economic needs as a state and our educational attainment. And it was something that was planned for many months, and so my apologies. And if you would allow me, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of minutes to talk about this important issue, I will try to be brief, but I certainly want my fellow commissioners and the citizens that I serve to have an understanding of how I've approached this important topic, and I know many of you all have shared that as well in yesterday's committee meeting. But briefly, in my life as a public servant, I've looked through different issues, and there's a way of approaching issues, and this is how I've approached issues all my public life and private life, and certainly how I've looked at this one. And one is really thinking about what's the best information and data we have on a topic, what are the consequences of a decision we would make, both unintended and intended, and then really thinking about the interests of citizens that we serve and the folks that are involved in the conversation. And so I have personally come to very much appreciate the information that has been shared by the agency, our biologists, our partners in this work, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the Mississippi and Atlantic Flyway Councils, and literally hundreds of citizens around the state on this topic. I think that facts are very, very important, and I think it's important that they guide our decision making from the robust population of sandhills to the experience that other states have had for many decades in this area, and really the balance of 8 crane festivals in several of the states that also balance the interests of hunters and bird watchers. I think that because our population is very healthy due to very important efforts from folks in this room and beyond, I think that we have an opportunity really to accommodate all users, and I appreciate the proposal that's before us in that regard. We've had the opportunity to coexist for over 50 years in our country, and I think that Tennessee is up to balancing these important interests, and this is a great step forward. I think in terms of consequences, both intended and unintended, I'm very comfortable just based on the history of regulating huntable wildlife. We have consistently generated revenues, research, and opportunity as a state to make sure that we accomplish the goals of conservation of the series. And so to Mr. Hill's important thought about habitat creation, I think that the opportunity to establish a season will create more opportunities for the species and for those of us throughout the state. I'm interested in this conversation of the whooping crane. I feel very confident that this will not pose a serious threat based on the extensive history in other states and the thoughtful proposal that's before this commission. And we'll certainly see. To Chairman Teague's point, hunters have had a long tradition of the responsibility of distinguishing between species. The difference between a gadwall and a hen mallard is the responsibility to know of every hunter that hunts. And there are consequences to being wrong in that decision, and it's one that I know that hunters across our state take very seriously, and I have confidence that they will make good decisions in this important regard. Last, just weighing out the interests of the public, whether we're hunters or non-hunters in the different issues, there's a lot of passion on every side of this issue, and I really honor and respect that. I think for me, in all of that passion, I think what we've got to get to is how do we make sure that the interests of one important group does not exclude the interests of the others? And for me, it's important to balance and heed the science that we have and the biology that we have before us and those facts that are so important, and to make room for as many users as possible that science allows and that the resource can take, and be responsible to the resource that we have, a real obligation to preserve and grow. We've seen this historically in Tennessee, whether it's deer, elk, turkey, or so many other wildlife species. We know that this species is particularly healthy and strong, and I believe it will grow stronger as a result of this proposal. So for me, I think to say we've got to do one or the other is an absolutely false choice. And I think it would be a disservice at this point, based on the science and our history as a state and what we know of what's happened in other states. I think it'd be a disservice not to make this responsible next step. And so for those reasons, I will be supporting this proposal today, and very interested in how we can balance this important conversation and keep as many people under this important tent as we can. There are a lot of folks that care deeply about this state who are in this room and beyond, and I appreciate the approach that the Chairman Teague, has taken on this, as well as Chairman McMillan, and the robust conversation that's happened in the public throughout the course of the last year, really, particularly the last few months. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the indulgence, and I appreciate you for giving me a moment to say my piece.
Any other comments from the commission?
I just want to say I appreciate the rhetoric that Jamie Woodson can so eloquently speak. I'd like to just come down there and hug you right now, because you pretty much spelled out exactly what this commission is thinking and what this agency is thinking. And I agree with her. I think we can share in the resource and respect those that want to do different things with it. So I certainly appreciate that. So I'll turn it back to you.
Any further discussion? Chairman McMillan, yesterday the Wildlife Management Committee voted, and I recommend passage of Proclamation 13-11.
Do I have a second?
Second.
We'll have one more opportunity to discuss it. Is there any discussion from the commission? Any more questions or comments from the audience? All right, I'd like to have a roll call vote for this if we could.
Jim Bledsoe. Aye. Harold Cannon.
Yes.
Bill Cox.
Aye.
Jeff Griggs.
Yes.
Jeff McMillan.
Yes.
Tom Rice.
Yes.
Jim Ripley.
Aye.
James Stroud.
Yes.
Trey Teague.
Yes.
Jamie Woodson.
Aye.
The motion passes.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Excuse me.
David Watson.
I'm sorry too. Thank you, Ms. Barber. I appreciate the unified vote of the commission, and I think that speaks well for how this season setting for Centennial Cranes was handled. So let's take a 10-minute break. Thank you.